You are listening to an After Dinner Conversation magazine podcast. After Dinner Conversation believes humanity is improved by ethics and morals grounded in philosophical truth, and that truth is discovered through intentional reflection and respectful debate. In order to facilitate this process, we have created a growing series of print books, a monthly short story magazine, and 2 different podcasts. This podcast, Philosophy Ethics Short Story Audiobooks, provides audiobook recordings of stories that have appeared in our magazine. And our companion podcast, Philosophy Ethics Short Story Discussions, is where we discuss the ethics of the choices made in the stories as a way to model the kinds of discussions we hope you're having about these readings with friends, family, or students. We would love it if you went over to check it out. I'm Roberta, your narrator, and one of the acquisition editors at After Dinner Conversation Publishing. Thank you for spending your time listening to our podcast and for reading the magazine. Thank you for supporting us through your magazine subscriptions and through patreon.com/afterdinnerconversation. And of course, if you enjoy this audiobook reading, please subscribe to our podcast, share it on social media, and suggest it to friends. Today's story is Take 'Em, written by Charles Williams and published in our April 2021 magazine. Take 'Em by Charles Williams. Okay, Dad, I'll come for the long weekend, but I'm not so sure I want to hunt with you, Joey said as he wound up his longest conversation with his father in years. Those couple of hunts you took me on when I was 13 didn't make a hunter out of me. I just remember being cold and that we didn't shoot much. Anyway, I don't know that I'm the type to enjoy killing things. Joey's parents had divorced 6 years ago, and his mother had moved them to a busy metropolitan area on the East Coast. During those years, he'd seen very little of his father, whose work as a petroleum engineer required extensive periods of foreign travel and residency. Joey's experiences of nature and wildlife were limited to the local parks of Chevy Chase, Maryland, where hunting was neither encouraged nor tolerated. Camel clothing was regarded as a symbol of ignorance, and most people didn't know a mallard from a mockingbird. Through deep immersion in urban life, he had acquired the belief that hunting for sure, and maybe fishing too, were at best questionable activities, not suited to the modern age of a growing population, environmental problems of all sorts, and scarce resources. But he respected his father as a well-educated man, known as a staunch environmentalist of his community, who had hunted from boyhood on. What was the appeal of it? Why was he still doing it at the age of 50? Now 19 and starting his junior year of college, Joey really wanted to reestablish a relationship with his father, man to man, as he envisioned it, and he would explain his reasons for doubt about the proposed hunt. Now, just a few weeks away, whether he hunted or not, Joey hoped they would become close again by the experience. And maybe he would even find something positive about hunting if he gave it a chance. Joey recalled the carefully chosen but blunt words that he had used to tell his father about his view of sport hunting. "It's immoral," he said, "to kill a living creature for recreation, especially when the deck is stacked in your favor with all the modern technology, high-powered weapons and shells, mechanical decoys, and such." His father had been quick with a response. "Son, the main objective isn't the killing. It's the hunt that men have engaged in for millennia, and until relatively recent times was the human race's main way of getting food. The rational part of your city boy's brain may not like hunting, but, in fact, hunting is embedded in our genes. The chase of game and killing the game, from mastodon to birds, goes back tens of thousands of years, and was the most important thing men did. And they had to do it well or die." The response had not surprised Joey, as he had read and heard that sort of defense of hunting before. He had answered, "It's no longer necessary to hunt food, and hunting simply encourages ancient behaviors that should be allowed to die out. Forget the Cro-Magnon stuff." His father laughed. "Genetics don't go away that quickly. Maybe if I live another 1,000 years, I would see some men who've lost the hunting instinct. But for now, we've still got it, whether we like it or not. And that includes you, Joey. Joey had scoffed at that point and then moved to his second point. Another problem with hunting and fishing is we don't need to do it. We can get all the healthy food we need right up at the corner grocery store. Why not buy food at the store, skip the hunting, and use the time saved for civilized activities? Then it was his father's chance to express skepticism. Healthy food is a byproduct of hunting. Wild game has better flavor, lower fat content, less chemicals, and so forth. And there's lots of other good reasons for hunting besides getting food uncontaminated by modern additives. Removal of overpopulated animals as determined by professional game managers. Protection of habitat for game, which also protects non-game birds and animals. And more people being aware of the outdoors and committed to preserving the environment. Half the birdwatchers I know developed their love of nature and support of wilderness areas in early life, hunting and fishing with their fathers. Today, kids just want to play video games, and organizations that help protect the environment are falling apart due to having fewer and fewer people who care. We're losing an entire generation from the experience and love of nature as it really is. Joey enjoyed the convoluted defense and continued the bantering tone. Sounds like blood sports propaganda to me. I still say that killing animals for fun is just plain wrong, no matter how much lipstick you try to put on it. Morally produced and organic products certified by independent groups testifying to the proper treatment of the animals are readily available. You know that's just a tiny part of what you see in the stores. How is a domestic chicken on your plate, a product of a polluting, industrial-scale operation, morally superior to a wild duck on that same plate that you shot yourself? And just envision all the air and water pollution that comes from a chicken processing plant. The jobs in that plant are the lowest paying and nastiest in America today. Aren't you just farming out the dirty work of killing the poultry to unskilled workers? Who benefits from that? What is the morality of it? Do it yourself. Come hunting with me. Joey reiterated, I'd just as soon buy a supermarket duck that was treated well and had some open range to run around in and was dispatched humanely. Did you say propaganda a minute ago? For hogs and cows, that open range you mentioned is usually a 5x5 cage instead of the usual 3x3. Don't be naive and think that the animals are real happy with that difference. Joey still didn't buy the idea of hunting. You never feel bad when you shoot a wild bird. You kill something that's beautiful and free just for a little sport? And what about the ones that are wounded? Again, his father had an answer. The birds I shoot have a great life of living free. Think how much better their life was than your chickens in a slightly larger cage. And if I cripple a bird, I always hunt it down and give it a quick ending. That's anthropomorphic thinking, Dad, and you know it. Neither a duck or a chicken or a deer or whatever has any perception of being free or not free prior to its death. It just exists. Then it dies. I still say there's no reason to kill a wild duck. You can go out and watch ducks or other birds with just binocs in hand. And you can stop by the store on the way home and buy some organic chicken or beef. So you satisfy both your urge to be in nature and your need for food without firing a shot. Joey and his dad went round and round like this, seemingly in circles, for at least an hour. They got into many side issues of their debate. Did the morality change if the species hunted, location, methods employed, or other factors changed? His dad made the point that deer hunting was absolutely necessary in modern life because mankind had eliminated all the apex predators except himself. Without hunters, deer would overrun the landscape and damage nature for many species of birds and other animals, as well as for humans. The discussion was lively, and a feeling of respect seemed to grow between them, despite the differences. His father finally implored him, "Let me take you out Saturday morning. 2 weeks from now, for opening day, and let's see if you stick with your idea that sport hunting is wrong." Joey finally agreed. He felt satisfied with the points against hunting that he had made, and he was impressed with the logic of his dad's responses. But he was still on the fence about whether he'd actually do any shooting. Maybe he'd just watch. Joey and his father were mostly silent on the drive to the marsh on opening day. 45 minutes into the trip, his father pulled the truck off the highway onto a crude gravel road that led past some oil wells to a boat landing, which was just a clearing in a marsh. His father turned off the ignition but didn't open the door. He turned to Joey and asked, "So are we hunting, or are we going to turn around and go back home?" The clear sky was incredibly dark, as there were no buildings or electric lighting anywhere in the area. The stars and constellations seemed as though they were magnified. In Chevy Chase at night, he could only see a few really bright stars and had never had a good look at a constellation. Sunrise was still an hour away, but bird calls of all sorts were starting. His father identified for him the calls of rails, ducks, geese, herons, as well as the yipping of coyotes and the deep croaks of bullfrogs. It was a wondrous moment, and he quickly identified with his father's love of being in nature as sunrise approached. But why did they have to ruin it by bringing guns to kill ducks? As a gesture of companionship and respect for his father, should he join the hunt this once? Was it possible that he could conclude that his father was right about the blood sports, that what they were about to do was no worse than paying others, butchers, chicken processors, hog slaughterers, to do his dirty work for him? And even in modern times, that human hunters still played an important role in ecological balance. The boat landing consisted of just a gravel slope leading into the water of a small bayou. There they loaded a John boat with decoys, guns, shells, and a bag of hot chocolate and snacks. They pulled the boat a short distance to the beginning of a trenace that would take them to the pond with his dad's duck blind on its north edge. There they placed the decoys in an arc, leaving an open space for landing ducks. His dad explained, "They'll land in this north wind we've got. We'll shoot just as they're hovering over the water." Joey focused on the words, "will shoot," and wondered. No doubt his dad would shoot. But would he also pull the trigger? Would he, upon seeing the helpless ducks barely moving as they decelerated into the wind before landing, fire his gun? Or would he aim high, deliberately missing? Could he bear the sight of a beautiful wild duck that he himself had just killed? He wasn't sure. Even worse, would he just wound a duck and then have to chase it down in the marsh and wring its neck to finish it off? But he kept thinking, trying to will himself to please his dad at the critical moment. An act that would bring them back together, or, if not done, might widen the gulf between them. During the next half hour, after putting out the decoys, they sat quietly in the blind as light began to appear slowly on the horizon with the impending sunrise. The silhouette of flying birds of many kinds could be seen passing in front of the gradually lightening blue, orange, and golden sky to the east. In those minutes, Joey reveled in his first adult experience of the sights and sounds of sunrise on a marsh, and his book learning about nature paled in comparison. Finally, his father announced, "It's shooting time. Next ducks that come in, we'll take. Remember, wait till I say, take 'em, and come up fast. I won't call the shot until they're in good range." Less than 5 minutes later, his father whispered, "Mallards coming from 2 o'clock. They're cupping. Get ready." Joey looked to the right front of the blind, and just over the tall Rousseau cane that defined the opposite shore of the pond, he could see about a dozen ducks making a beeline for the decoys from a few hundred yards away. Still crouching behind the vegetation at the front of the blind, Joey's left hand trembled as he eased the shotgun up where he could grip it with both hands. He placed his right hand on the stock, his finger ready to release the safety on the trigger guard. Closer, closer, his focus intense and his hands shaking a little, he lost all consciousness of questions of morality, of what he was doing. He was completely absorbed in the primordial chase, approaching the climatic moment of completing an ancient ritual. Yes, it was the kill. His dad gave a few soft quacks on a call, and the birds wheeled left, pitching perfectly into the middle of the decoys. An easy shot, as his dad had predicted. Then his dad gave the command. Take 'em. Joey threw his gun to his shoulder, swung the shotgun on a flaring drake mallard, and pulled the trigger. And now for the discussion questions. Number 1. It's clear Joey's dad knows that Joey doesn't want to shoot ducks. Is it wrong of the father to ask him to do it? Does Joey's father know that he's leveraging his emotional connection to his son to cause his son pain for his personal satisfaction? Would it matter if he did know? Number 2. How do you know when you are simply having a lively debate on the merits of a topic compared to when you are pressuring someone into doing something against preference? Should a conversation simply stop without debate after the first "no thank you"? Number 3. What is the strongest argument Joey makes against hunting? What is the strongest argument his father makes? Number 4. Is the situation in the story different than someone being coerced into having sex from someone whom they want approval? What makes it different or not different? And number 5. What is a situational variation of this story where Joey should simply go along? What is a variation where he should say no? How do you draw the distinction between the situations? That was Charles Williams' story, entitled Take 'em. Next week, we'll be reading The Angel in the Juniper, written by Sarah Johnson. If you enjoyed this story, head over to our companion podcast, After Dinner Conversation Discussions, and listen to our discussions of this and other short stories from our magazine. We will include a link in the description. And of course, you can always continue the discussion on our webpage, in the comment section, or on our Facebook page. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.